All right. We were scheduled to have Senator Gallego with us at the bottom of the hour, but he's here early, so we get as much time as we can with the senator, so thanks for doing this.
Yep, it's my job to do this.
I appreciate it. You notice he didn't say it's good to be here. It's my job.
I'll know afterwards. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, let's... I appreciate you coming in, and it's one of the things we talk about often is this debate that needs to happen. And I think you're very good at it. And I always appreciate you being willing to talk about your positions on things.
Absolutely.
And especially the important issues. And I want to get to some of the big issues, including the possibility of a government shutdown.
Okay.
But I want to address what's happened in the last couple of weeks with the violence.
Yep.
What happened with Charlie Kirk, you made statements, and I thought it was very kind of you in the words that you said. And then we had the shooting in Dallas at an ICE facility. First of all, it's got to concern you being such a public figure and a political figure. It's got to be personally concerning, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially as a dad, like I'm a father of 3 young kids. I'm worried about what happens to them if something happens to me. I mean, one of the things that, Charlie, the death of Charlie, the reason I think it had a lot of impact on a lot of people in a bipartisan manner, and we all had very different opinions than him, was he's at first was a father. That's the first thing is, right? He's a father, he's a husband to somebody. And that man was taken suddenly and violently and unjustly. And, that shouldn't happen to anyone for their political opinion and or for what job they have. And so I am worried about what's happening here, what's happening in Dallas, what happens in our schools with school violence, in general, everything that's happening with, violent rhetoric. And I think, it's incumbent upon us as leaders and start over, right? Like, let's all look internally and see how we've been acting, what we've been saying, and we all could have been better. And let's just try to do better, right? And I think there's nothing wrong with say, like, you know what? I'm sure I can look back and say I should not have said that. That's not as harsh as I should be. Let me try to be a better human now.
And you've walked that line, because you and I have had conversations. You've walked the line of being passionate about what you believe and defending your position without being aggressive. And I think part of that is we've gotten to throw names around at people and labeling people. Yeah. And I don't ever blame rhetoric on violence. But when people are using that rhetoric as a justification, I mean, first we marginalize someone, then we call them dangerous, and then it makes it easier for us to eliminate them. Yeah,
and again, like I think looking back, and like I've done some self-reflection, and like I definitely have had my moments where I could have been a better human, but there is nothing that causes a direct shooting, like someone saying something. But there's a lot of crazy people out there with easy access to guns. And, I as a leader, have to be careful that I'm not throwing flame on that fire. I should be able to make a sane, argument, a coherent argument, and do it passionately without having to move to such a rhetorical place that I think, it could inflame already heavy tensions that are happening in this country.
Yeah, you can call somebody wrong without calling them evil.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And I think that's, the analogy I saw in a news story today, speaking of fueling a fire, was that a lot of times this rhetoric throws fuel on the fire, but the rhetoric is not the fire.
Correct.
And it's the fire we need to be concerned about.
Right. Yeah. But still, as leaders, we shouldn't contribute to it from the left or from the right.
So let's jump then into a topic of this possibility of a government shutdown.
That's just evil. Just kidding. Typical politician.
Here we go. But the possibility of this shutdown happening. Yeah. And the White House saying that they're not going to meet with Democrats, the Democrats saying that this is, as a matter of fact, I heard Senator Kelly say this is a guy that wrote the art of the deal and he won't meet with us. What needs to happen here from both sides?
So, I mean, traditionally, this way this ends, from both sides, is everyone has to give in. My opinion, the demand list that my leadership, the Democrats, gave was ridiculously long, and I think they're going to have to give a lot. And I think, partly that's just the way the election swung. We have a legitimate concern. And my main concern is that there are tens of thousands of Arizonans, potentially hundreds of thousands of Arizonans, that premiums are going to go up starting in January, $200 to $300, right? We have a short time period between now and essentially mid-December before we change that. And this is a time period I want this president, the White House, Democrats, Republicans to work together to do that. Let's work together on that, pass that budget, put the premium subsidies in there so Arizonans are going to pay an extra $200, $300 starting in January. I think that's a good compromise. We keep government open. We get people to not end up having like a huge increase in the premiums, and we keep moving on. The other stuff that I think my colleagues have demanded is ridiculous, and I just don't think it's even viable.
So when you look at the different, and I've been curious about this for a while, and it's a little off topic, but I think it fits here. You were in the House, and now you're in the Senate. The procedures are different, and you have a different role you can play in the Senate. They call it the saucer that cools the drink. Is there things that you can do in the Senate that you think you guys can do in the United States Senate to work on that compromise where it's all or nothing in the House, it's just a simple majority? Are there things you can do?
Well, to give credit from my experience with Senate Republicans, and look, I've only been there for 10 months, and a lot of the Democrats too, they do work fairly well together. They actually have like a very good, tone and tenor with each other. I've made some really good friends that, our families have dinner together. A lot of it right now is just a game of, brinksmanship. And I think people are actually going at this from a position of honesty. Like, we want to make sure that people's healthcare premiums don't go up. That's too much. People are paying too much for everything right now. We have a short time period to do it. Let's get it done. I think the Republicans want to just have a budget, and they want to move on because they want to have other things. It's not that they're being nasty about it, but we're both very, energetic and emotional about this right now, and we just need to, sit down and actually get to the point and figure out where that compromise is. But they both have to. They both sides have to want to compromise.
Do you think that there is the sentiment that you are now saying? Do you think that same sentiment exists with the majority of the Republicans?
I don't know about the majority of Republicans, but enough Republicans.
Okay.
And these are the Republicans I talked to. I think they have that. In no world do I think my Republican colleagues want to see people have $200 more in premiums, right? Even if they don't care for Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. I think they understand that the law is here. All we're going to do is punish people that unnecessarily need it. I just think that they have to we all have to come to the point to decide, like, are we going to do this or we're going to not? We're trying to honestly force the issue because this is one of the last times we have it before premiums just going up. And once they go up, if we try to get back to this in January, it doesn't change. The premiums are there for a whole year. For a whole year, Arizonans are going to end up having to pay more if we don't act now.
So does it change things moving quickly toward an election year? Because the House members are going to, the House Democrats really believe, and I think they do too, they have a very good chance of taking over the majority in the House in the next election cycle. How many of these decisions right now are going, in their minds, are going to affect that election cycle, or do you think it doesn't play into it with these decisions?
So, to be honest, in May, that people are trying to get everything done before next year when everyone starts making political decisions. So, it's the eventual coming of the political decisions that are making people do the political decisions right now. That being said, the best thing that we could all guarantee Democratic Republicans, nobody wants prices to go up for anything, right?
Right.
That's a bipartisan thing, right? And we can take care of this issue right now to protect millions of Americans, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, I think, but maybe in hundreds of thousands of Arizonans, so they don't end up paying more for the healthcare premiums. And I think that my Republican colleagues understand that and believe that just as much as we do. This is why we want to take this opportunity to basically force the issue.
All right. Let's talk about a couple of things. First of all, let's talk about water. Can you give us an update? We know there's negotiations that are going to happen. There's about an 18% decrease in the amount of water that Arizona is going to get from the Colorado River based on water at Lake Mead and other places. Yeah. It's going to affect agriculture in Arizona, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future. Is there any update on what direction it's moving?
I mean, right now we know that the states are negotiating among themselves. We don't know that outcome. The head of the Bureau of Reclamation, who was actually from Arizona, was just replaced. Was nominated by this president, just replaced and withdrawn. Hopefully, he puts someone else there that's a professional and understands the future. Like, look, Arizona's actually been very good compared to other states.
It's so frustrating.
And people think that we're the water hogs. We've actually been really good compared to other states on conserving water. And of course, we could do better. But, little green California, by the way, has been horrible about water conservation compared to us. So I'm hoping that whatever comes out, they recognize that we've done an effort. These other states have not. And by the way, we're a growing state. There's a national need for us to have water here. The chips are the future. everything that we need for the strength of this country is here. And even these chip manufacturing companies, they recycle 90% of their water. So can we do better? Yes. We'll have to figure out when the cuts come, how we're going to be able to still keep our agriculture going, how we can cut, how we can be smart about it. But there's no reason why we should be punished compared to other states when we've been the best compared to the other states.
And see, that's the frustrating thing for me is doing the homework on that, is seeing that Arizona, years and years and years ago began to plan for this with water storage and how we do things.
Yep.
And there are people in California asking questions saying, why aren't we capturing rainwater? Why is it just going into the ocean?
Yep. Yeah. And look, we've made farmers not farm in certain areas. We've gone through a drop contingency plan to drop our water. So this is all voluntary, right? This is stuff we did to ourselves before the federal government came in. They should give us credit for that, because what Colorado hasn't done anything. Nevada doesn't use as much, but they have. But California has been absolute hog waste down in the Imperial Valley, and we should have as much. They should have respect for the work we've done so far.
And in order to get that project passed by all the states that are involved in this, because California was such a big state, the concession was that we lose out before they lose out.
Correct.
That we had to make that concession in the original agreement.
Right.
And now that they're renegotiating, we're hoping that some of that gets reversed.
And because again, there's been a reversal on this. Now there's more people coming in. We have higher industry. We've been good about actually being better about water usage than they have, and we deserve to be recognized for that. And at the end of the day, the federal government's going to have to stamp this. We'll vote for it, and I think that that requires compromise among a lot of people.
All right, before you go, we just got this today. It's a press release about entrepreneurship and a bipartisan piece of legislation you're sponsoring. Can you tell us what this is and what it will do?
So basically what we saw in talking to a lot of young business men and women that are trying to do startups, the limitations of how much money they can collect and how many people they can ask for money was very narrow, because things are just more expensive right now, right? I'm sure you guys are hearing like all these tech startups, AI startups. That requires you to get a bunch of investors. The government, we were regulating how many people you were allowed to ask for money. Makes sense, because you don't want Ponzi schemes, you don't want fraudulent schemes, absolutely. But now time has changed. It's bigger pool of money, bigger investors, there's more sophisticated investors. So myself, another Democrat, and Chairman Scott, Tim Scott, Republican from South Carolina, has introduced a bill that does a couple of things. Number one, raises the amount of money you can raise as an angel investor and how many angel investors you can ask for that. The idea being is we need to be competitive against all these other countries, and they have rules that are a lot looser. But in order for us to get us in the position to even win, we have to be at the base level, able to fund these people and get the funds. Now, we're not funding it. These are individuals that are going to fund themselves.
Yeah, so the reason for the restrictions, as you alluded to with the Ponzi schemes, is protecting people from bad actors.
Yeah, 100%.
But and that was, Bernie Madoff and the others and some of the reactions. But at some point, you realize maybe it was not necessarily an overreaction at the time. Right. But as times change, these restrictions have to change.
Exactly. So, like, if you saw during the tech bubble, there was a lot of for you youngins, there was this tech bubble that happened in the early 2000s. People would just put up a website and then get a bunch of people invest, and that caused a huge bubble. It caused a lot of people losing money. And again, there was some sane restrictions, but the money never changed with the time in terms of the levels, right? There's been inflation on everything, but we never actually changed how much you were able to collect as an investor. And so this is kind of a reaction to that we think is a sane, moderate position, and it's bipartisan.
All right, so I have about a minute and a half left with you. So I'm going to ask one question. I'm going to throw this at you. I just read a story the other day that the White House is warning now about the insolvency of Social Security and that all things need to be on the table. Are you working on this? What do you think needs to happen? Do you have in your mind what kind of a solution we can work towards so that the American people know? I'm a lot closer than you are to Social Security.
I've been working for 31 years. I've been paying to my Social Security too. Look, I think insolvency is an issue. Partly it's because we just have less people working, right? So number one, we have to be very smart about, jobs right now. For example, we should have legal immigration. I know you and I talk about this. Make sure people are verified, background check, pay taxes, pay into Social Security. There's people that are working a lot of jobs, kind of your rideshare jobs. We need to figure out how to get them in the system without it being too onerous to them. And I've talked to a couple of the CEOs of Uber and a couple other things of them about figuring that out. I think the caps are also not keeping up with the times. What does that mean? Every year we say that anybody that makes more than $170,000, that $1 after that, you don't get tax for Social Security. I think we have to just let that go. As you go up in wages, you get taxed more on Social Security, but you end up getting more in the benefit on the back end. That would actually right size it, Social Security, I think, into the 2060s at that point. That would be my position on that.
All right, I promised I would get you out by 42 after, and we are 5 seconds from 42 after.
you go.
So thank you so much,
Thank you
Senator,
again, Mike.
for the
Thanks for having
time.
me.
All right, Senator Ruben Gallego.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch and listen to the new season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.